Hey guys, this is Tiber Brew coming at you from Ellicott City, Maryland. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how long I've been brewing, some of my experiences from the past, and I hope that you're interested and will share some of your own stories and experiences as well. So stick with me. All right, so we're going to delve back into my past, and this is the point where I actually get a little cautious because I'm not really sure I want to tell you how far back my home brewing experience goes. But let's just say that I started in my early 20s. And in fact, what I've got here is a notebook that I keep. In fact, it's got Flying Dog University. I'm a proud graduate. Flying Dog makes a good beer despite that. But I keep all of my files and good notes about my ingredients, things like that. But recently I grabbed my very first notebook that I used when I made my first beer. And according to this, I've hand wrote all this. This was November of 1992. So that's over 25 years ago. So it's pretty funny and humbling to go back and look at some of your comments and your approach to brewing. And those of you who are new to home brewing might really not recognize the home brewing industry as it existed back in the early 90s. So this was just catching on. There was a Homebrew Store down in Light Street in downtown Baltimore that I used to go to. It was one of the few places in the area where you could buy homebrew ingredients and get any advice. And really, the internet wasn't available, so you really relied on books to get advice and guidance about how to make a beer. So looking back, I'm just going to share a couple of the things I wrote here about my ingredients. So I used a Premier Ale malt extract, hopped. So this is the hops were already added to this liquid malt extract that I used. I also, it says, used yeast, which was included with the kit. So this was obviously a dry yeast, and 5 gallons of tap water. So my approach is, it said that I boiled malt with 1 gallon of water for 1 hour. So again, this is my first beer. I'm utilizing just whatever pots and pans I happen to have. At that time, I didn't have 2 dimes to rub together, so I wasn't spending a lot of money on equipment, certainly on my first foray into home brewing. So I boiled it for an hour and then added 4 gallons of water to top it up to my full 5 gallons. And then pitched the yeast. It says I didn't measure specific gravity. And I've got to tell you, I'm getting better at this, but occasionally on brew day, I'll forget to make a specific gravity measurement at different points in the day. So, this really speaks to my approach back then as well. It wasn't real focused. And I fermented it for 6 days. I siphoned it off into another bucket. I added 3/4 of priming sugar, and then bottled. So also I put some notes about the fact that I was interrupted halfway through bottling and that I didn't resume until the following morning. So I'm sure that had an impact on the net result as well, since that priming sugar already started kicking the yeast activity up and probably resulted in maybe a less than ideal outcome. Okay, so I put some notes about the result. So it says, good first effort, exclamation point. I needed a lot of self-affirmation. And this is probably the best part. It says, had a noticeable edge / aftertaste. That's probably an understatement. And I'm not sure what this was. Pitch of sugar made all the difference. So maybe was it a negative way. It says the second half of the batch tasted skunky and undercarbonated. Well, obviously I know why it was undercarbonated, because since I left it overnight after pitching the sugar, the priming sugar, the yeast was already starting to get active, and there wasn't as much CO2 by the next day when I got around to bottling it. So this was great to look back at my history, and I had all these handwritten notes from batches. It was December, January, February. So I was about one a month, and you can see that over time I started taking on some more complex ingredients and recipes. I've got a pale ale where I'm throwing in a peel of orange, 2 cinnamon sticks, 2 cloves. And it looks like I switched pretty quickly to getting a larger pot and doing a full 5-gallon boil. But I was still doing, for the first couple of months, just looks like light liquid malt extract, 2 pounds of extra light dry malt extract. I was actually putting in separate hops, so I wasn't using the pre-hopped extracts. So that was good. So it's interesting to just go back and reflect after a while, and it's really an important tip to write down your experiences and make sure that you're taking as detailed notes as you possibly can about your approach and what was working, what was not working. If for nothing else, years later, you can go back and have a good laugh. So, over the past 25 years, certainly my brewing experience has changed a lot. Number one is I started very, very simply, and the availability of information has changed dramatically. So there really wasn't a lot of access to that before the internet really, really took off. So some of the other things that I think have really, really changed is also sanitation. So if you look at, for example, your cleaning and sanitation supplies, initially I was using liquid soap to clean and using bleach to sanitize, which was a real hassle. I know I've ruined a number of my brewing day jeans or whatever by spilling bleach on them and things like that. And of course, you had to rinse that. So the introduction of things like Star San, no rinse sanitizers, PBW for cleaning, really has made things very, very they've improved things significantly, so it's so much easier. It takes less time, and you get better results. I haven't really had a lot of bad experiences. My beers, they've not tasted all good, but I've had very few that I felt like had gotten infected and really had significantly off flavors. So the other thing is, over time, I certainly have changed the frequency of my brewing. So again, I started 25 years ago. That was before I had kids. Once the kids came along, certainly the brewing went from once a month to once every couple of months, and eventually, when they were 10 years old, for example, it was really busy. So I would get to the point. I know that there were some years where I did a batch a year. But then a little bit over a year ago, I really decided, hey, this is a great opportunity to get back into it. I had a little bit more money, and I was able to invest in kegging equipment that made things so much easier to get rid of the bottles, and that took more time out of things. In addition, there's so much that's available on the internet now. The folks on YouTube, I love watching Larry, the guys on 21090, so many various options to learn about home brewing, see people in action, learn from their mistakes, and get great recipe ideas from them as well. So it's been a lot of fun. If you've been thinking about getting into home brewing, I'd encourage you to do it. Take it slow. You don't have to jump in with both feet immediately. Start out slow. 25 years ago, you were able to make, simple beers, and they were drinkable. I drank all of those beers. So you're not gonna have serious issues if something goes wrong. Almost anything that you make, you're going to be able to drink. You might drink some other good beers first and save those for later in the night, but they'll be drinkable, and you'll have a lot of fun. And there's a lot of pride of making your own beer and sharing it with your friends. So thank you all. Cheers. And I look forward to hearing your comments. Post them below. Share some of your own experiences. For those of you who've been brewing for a long time, I'd love to hear from you. And like this video and subscribe. So until next time, cheers.